God breaks the man he wants to use. There comes a moment in every soul's journey when the walls begin to crumble, when the ground beneath feels unstable, and when all that once gave you strength is stripped away. Not because you're forgotten, but because you're being formed. You see, before God ever raises a man, he first breaks him, not in cruelty, but in divine precision. He breaks the ego, the false identity, the reliance on the outer world, so that what remains is the true self, pure, obedient, and aligned with the inner vision. This isn't about suffering for suffering's sake. It's the sacred dismantling of everything that stands between who you think you are and who you are meant to be. It is the fire of transformation, the kind that doesn't burn you alive, but burns away what was never real. Because God doesn't use the man who is full of himself. He uses the man who has been emptied, who has learned to walk by inner sight, not outer evidence, who has discovered that the kingdom is within. Tonight, we walk into that mystery, into that breaking, into that becoming. The breaking is an inner awakening, not outer punishment. When people hear the phrase, God breaks the man he wants to use, they often think of misfortune, suffering, or tragedy as divine punishment. They imagine God as an external force imposing hardship to test or punish, but the truth is far more profound. The breaking is not about external events, it's about the inner shift, the radical transformation of your consciousness. This breaking is not cruelty, it is mercy, it is not judgment, it is awakening. True breaking does not come from loss in the physical world. It comes when your inner world no longer fits the illusion you've been living in. It's when your imagined self, the self built on societal labels, success titles, even religious identity, begins to disintegrate. Why? Because God can only operate through the real you, and the real you is hidden beneath layers of conditioning, fear, pride, and survival, mode thinking. So when the breaking begins, it's usually quiet, subtle, invisible to the world around you. You may still be showing up at work, still attending church, still taking care of your family, but inside something is crumbling. A voice you've ignored begins to speak louder. The goals you chased no longer satisfy. The prayers you prayed now seem hollow. It's not depression, it's not failure, it's initiation. You're being summoned, not to fix your life, but to surrender the false self you thought was your life. This is the beginning of your spiritual rebirth. And it rarely begins with light. It begins in the dark, when the things that once gave you identity no longer work. The people, places, and performances that defined you now feel foreign. That's because your spirit is being called back to the truth, that you are not your reputation, your job, your trauma, or even your beliefs. You are the image and likeness of God, consciousness itself, and the breaking is meant to reveal that. This moment, this breaking, cannot be outsourced. No pastor, mentor, or book can do it for you. It is a solitary journey because it is a deeply personal shift. The ego will fight back. It will tell you that you're being punished, that you've done something wrong, that God has turned his back. But what is actually happening is that your old way of seeing is being dismantled to make room for something divine. This is not abandonment. This is intimacy. Because God cannot commune with a false identity. He waits for the real you, the one that was buried under years of survival and striving. In this phase, your desires will be tested, not because God is teasing you, but because he is refining you. You may ask for healing, but instead experience deeper wounds. You may ask for promotion, but face delay. You may ask for direction, but encounter silence. Why? Because what you truly desire is not a change in circumstance, but a change in consciousness. God knows that until you become aligned with the truth within you, anything he gives you will only strengthen the illusion of separation. So the breaking is sacred. It is not the work of a cruel God, but of a wise creator who sees your true capacity. It is the careful removal of everything you are not, to reveal everything you already are. Not in some distant future, not after more rituals, more striving, or more obedience, but now, in this moment. And it hurts because letting go of the false identity feels like death, but it's only death to the lie, not to your essence. The real you cannot be broken, it can only be revealed. That is the paradox of spiritual breaking. It feels like loss, but it's actually the greatest gain. You're not losing your life, you're losing the illusion that you ever had control over it. In this stage, silence becomes your teacher. The still, small voice within begins to guide you, not the voice of fear or logic, but the voice of divine knowing. It whispers not instructions, but identity. It reminds you, you are not here to perform for God. You are here to embody Him. You are not here to beg. You are here to create. You are not here to seek approval. You are here to awaken, and as this truth grows in you, your outer world may still look the same, but your awareness shifts. You begin to see that every circumstance was never your enemy. It was your mirror. Every delay was a doorway. Every heartbreak was an invitation. Every setback was really a setup for you to remember who you are. So don't run from the breaking. Don't pray it away. Don't numb it with distractions or label it as punishment. Instead, be still. Let the false fall away. Let the quiet empty you. Let the darkness teach you, because you are not being destroyed. You are being prepared. The seed must break before it bears fruit. The clay must be pressed before it can hold oil. And the man must die to the illusion of self before he can carry the power of God. You are in the hands of the potter. You are not forgotten. You are not being punished. You are being shaped from the inside out. This is not about fixing your outer life. It's about discovering the inner life that governs all. So stand in the breaking with reverence. Let your heart crack open. Let your mind be renewed, because God is not trying to hurt you. He's trying to use you. But He can only use what is real, and the breaking is how He brings the real you to the surface. This is your awakening. This is your becoming. This is your breakthrough, not when things change, but when you do. And once you awaken to that truth, nothing outside you will ever have power over you again. Emptied before, elevated, the law of divine usefulness before any man can be truly used by God. He must be emptied. Not partially, not gradually, but wholly. You must be drained of the old wine before you can carry the new. This is not just poetic. This is law. The law of divine usefulness is that only the emptied vessel can be filled. The man God intends to use must be stripped of his attachments, his pride, his sense of self-sufficiency, until he stands unclothed before the presence of the divine, with nothing to lean on but what lives within him. And this emptying, it is not glamorous, it is not celebrated, it is not applauded. It often looks like failure, like isolation, like betrayal, like obscurity. The man God wants to use is often overlooked by men because men judge by status, but God chooses by substance. And substance is found in the one who has nothing left but faith. You see, before elevation comes humiliation, not at the hands of God, but at the hands of circumstance, not to shame you, but to refine you. You must come to the place where your dreams no longer drive you, where your ambitions no longer inflate you, and where your will no longer resists him. You must come to the end of you, because God will never compete for space inside a crowded soul. He waits until you surrender, not in weakness, but in wisdom. Look around you. The ones God uses might not always look the part. They might not have the credentials, but what they do have is depth. They've been emptied of ego, of self-glory, of external dependence. And in that emptiness, God has found a channel for divine power. They're no longer reacting to the world. They are creating from within. They speak from authority, not because of titles, but because of alignment. And alignment comes from surrender, but to surrender, you must be emptied, emptied of your need to control outcomes, emptied of your obsession with timing, emptied of the belief that you must earn what has already been given. And the process of being emptied is painful because it touches everything you've built your identity upon. It shatters your timeline. It rewrites your definitions of success. It causes you to release dreams you once thought were divine, because now God is offering something deeper, purpose. When you're full of your own plans, your own strategies, your own wisdom, there's no room for the mind of God, so he gently or sometimes forcefully removes those weights, not as punishment, but as preparation. Think about it. If you are to be a carrier of divine power, you must be able to hold it without leaking it through pride or fear. You must be strong enough to carry it, but empty enough to never claim it as your own. And only the broken man understands this balance. This is the spiritual paradox. God will not fill a vessel that is already full, so he allows the draining, he permits the loss, not because he wants to watch you suffer, but because he's purifying the container. Every empty season is sacred. It is not the absence of God, it is the presence of refinement, and that refinement is not to make you acceptable to God. You already are. The refinement is to make you available to him. Understand this. God doesn't need your abilities. He needs your availability. But true availability only happens when you're no longer driven by your need to be seen, validated, or in control. When you're empty, you become sensitive to the still small voice. You're no longer distracted by applause or threatened by opposition. You're anchored, not in circumstance, but in consciousness. You become the kind of man God can trust with influence because you won't exploit it. You won't idolize it. You'll use it for what it was always meant to do: serve, heal, speak life, and build the kingdom within. You'll notice something profound here. When you're emptied, you begin to live not from force, but from flow. You stop pushing, you stop striving, you begin to allow, you begin to imagine rightly, you begin to hear clearly. This is the realm of effortless manifestation, not because it's easy, but because you're no longer divided within. The inner clutter is gone, the channel is open, the divine current flows without resistance. That's power, not noise, not hype, but flow, and this flow can only move through an empty vessel, not an empty shell, but a man emptied of ego and filled with awareness. That is what God is after, not your performance, your presence, and that presence becomes power when it is rooted in truth, not borrowed truth, not parroted doctrine, but experienced reality. You know now? Not because you read it, but because you lived it. You died to who you were, and now you are who you were always meant to be. So when you find yourself in a season of emptiness, take heart, you are not forgotten. You are not finished, you are not disqualified, you are being refined for divine use. Do not rush the process, do not curse the quiet, do not panic in the pruning. Stay still, stay surrendered, let God finish what he started. Because when he is done, you will not only carry the oil, you will be the lamp. This is the mystery of divine usefulness. Only the man who has lost all else can be trusted to carry all that matters, not because he's perfect, but because he's pure. Pure in heart, pure in motive, pure in awareness, and this purity comes not from striving, but from surrender. So let the world mock your silence, let them misread your emptiness, let them walk away during your winter. Because when the season shifts and God chooses to pour, he will pour through the one who has made room. You are that vessel, not because you have it all together, but because you've let it all go. And that is the man God uses, not the one full of himself, but the one who has been emptied by fire and now burns with light. True power is born in hidden places before the man God wants to use stands in power. He must first walk through obscurity. He must be hidden, sometimes for years, not because he is forgotten, but because he is being formed. The world prizes visibility. It rushes to the spotlight, to applause, to acclaim. But heaven does not move at the pace of man's approval. Heaven waits for maturity, not popularity, and maturity only grows in the hidden place. You must understand, nothing of eternal value is ever born on the stage. It is always born in the wilderness, in the dry, silent, lonely place where no one sees you, where nothing makes sense, and where the only voice you have left is the voice within. God hides the man he wants to use, not to punish him, but to protect him. Because premature exposure is dangerous. A man not yet grounded in his identity will mistake attention for purpose, and God will not give his glory to another. This hiddenness feels like delay, but it is actually a shield. It's the divine cocoon where your roots grow deep, where your character is forged, where your soul is detoxed of its need for applause. This is the sacred slow cooking of destiny. It's not flashy, it's not fast. But it is faithful, because what God is building in you is not for a moment, it's for a lifetime. Think of every man who was used by God. Before the moment of power came the season of silence. Joseph had the dream early, but he was thrown into pits and prisons before he was trusted with leadership. David was anointed king, but sent back to tend sheep and play harps in obscurity before he ever held the crown. Moses had the fire of deliverance burning in his heart, but he was exiled to the desert for 40 years before he heard the voice from the burning bush. Even Jesus, the Son of God, lived 30 years in the background, in anonymity, learning, listening, being shaped, before his ministry even began. What is God showing us? That true power must be concealed before it can be revealed. The strength of your outer work will always depend on the strength of your inner life, and that inner life is only built when no one's watching, when it's just you, God, and the truth of who you really are. You may feel invisible, misunderstood, passed over. You may be watching others rise while you remain in waiting, but do not despise your hidden season. It is sacred. This is where you are learning the language of the Spirit. This is where you are being taught to trust without evidence, to follow without clarity, to create without an audience. You are not being punished. You are being anchored, because when the time comes and the call is public, you must be able to stand, not on popularity, but on presence. Not on charisma, but on consciousness, and that kind of weight cannot be faked. It must be formed in silence. Power that lasts is not produced by platforms. It is birthed in the secret place where the soul is stripped of ego, and God becomes the only source. And here's the paradox. The man who is ready to be used by God is usually the man no longer interested in being used to impress men. He no longer seeks to be great. He simply desires to be true. He has come through the breaking, through the emptying, and now he rests in the stillness. He no longer chases purpose like a prize. He has become the embodiment of purpose, and it is from that state that true power flows. You will know you are ready not when doors open, but when you no longer fear them closing. When you can sit in the shadows and not shrink, when you can bless others rising without comparison, when you can create without needing credit, when you can move forward without applause, that is real strength. The strength to be without striving to seem. And this strength cannot be borrowed. It must be cultivated. That is why the hidden place is necessary. It is the garden where your spirit grows deep roots, where God shows you who you are before anyone else affirms it. So that when the light does come, you are not defined by it. You simply reflect it. There is a reason God hides the man he wants to use. He's not just preparing your gift. He's preparing your heart, because the weight of glory is heavy. If you carry it from a fractured soul, it will crush you. But if you carry it from a whole heart, it will pour through you, and that's what God wants, not for you to carry the calling, but for the calling to carry through you. So if you are in the hidden place, don't rush it. Sit with the silence, let it teach you, let it reveal your attachments, your hidden motives, your subtle fears. Let it refine your desires. Because when the curtain finally opens, you must be able to stand naked in truth, unafraid, unshaken, and unbound, and make no mistake. The curtain will open. The moment of release always comes. But when it does, it will not come to validate your waiting. It will come because you've been formed by it. You will step into that moment not needing it, but ready for it, not proving anything, but expressing everything you've become. That's the man God uses, not the one with the loudest voice, but the one with the deepest root, not the one with the most talent, but the one who can hold glory without losing integrity, the one who no longer seeks power, but embodies it from within. So honor your hidden season. It is not a detour, it is not a delay, it is the very road to destiny, because before God uses a man in public, he forms him in private, and the deeper the calling, the longer the forming. You are not behind, you are not forgotten, you are not buried, you are being planted, and soon the fruit of this hidden obedience will reveal itself. But when it does, you will not be surprised, you will simply be ready, because the man who has been truly hidden is the man who can now be trusted. Death before resurrection. Why the old you must die. There is a divine law that governs all transformation. Nothing is truly born until something else dies. You cannot be made new until the former version of yourself is allowed to fall. This death is not physical, it is internal. It is the end of illusion, the crumbling of false identity, the burial of the self you created to survive, impress, or control. God cannot use the man who clings to what must die, for this man still moves from fear, not faith. He holds onto the mask because he is terrified of what might happen if people saw the truth. But the man God wants to use must walk straight into this fear, not to be consumed by it, but to be purified through it, because on the other side of the dying is resurrection power. but that power only flows through vessels that have first surrendered everything they thought they were. You see, it is not enough to have a calling, it is not enough to have talent or vision or fire. If the ego still rules your heart, you will mistake ambition for purpose, control for obedience, and performance for love. And so God in mercy allows your old self to be undone. He removes the scaffolding you depended on. He strips away the titles, the roles, the reputations, and even the relationships that once propped up your identity. This death is rarely dramatic. Often it is quiet, slow, hidden. It comes in the form of unanswered prayers, closed doors, rejection letters, sudden losses, silence from heaven. But underneath the surface, something divine is at work. The soul is being separated from the shell. The eternal is being pulled from the temporary. What dies is not who you are, but who you thought you needed to be. The man God uses must become empty before he can be filled. And this is not poetic, it is painful. You will grieve not just events, but versions of yourself. You will feel the ache of letting go, the disorientation of shedding a skin you've worn for years. You may cry out, "Who am I without this?" And heaven will answer, not with a voice, but with stillness, because the answer is not given. It is revealed through the dying. You must be willing to be nothing, to become no one in the eyes of the world, so that you can become someone in truth. As long as your worth is tied to outcomes, you are not yet free. As long as your peace depends on performance, you are not yet whole. And so, in love, the Spirit brings you into the tomb, into the darkness, into the mystery of death. Not to destroy you, but to strip you of all that was never truly you. This is why so few men ever walk in true power, because so few are willing to die. They want resurrection without crucifixion. They want elevation without surrender. They want transformation without exposure. But the way of the Spirit is not comfort, it is truth, and truth always exposes, not to shame, but to liberate. Look at the pattern in nature. The seed must fall into the ground and die before it bears fruit. The caterpillar must dissolve in the chrysalis before it becomes a butterfly. The night must fall before the dawn can rise. So why would your spiritual transformation be any different? God is not after the improved you. He is after the resurrected you. And resurrection is not an event. It is a state of consciousness. It is the awareness that you are not the limited being you once thought you were. It is the awakening to your divine identity. It is the shift from separation to union, from effort to embodiment. And you cannot think your way into this. You must be broken into it. What breaks is not your body, but your resistance, your illusions, your need to control, your addiction to image, your attachment to who you were. And when that breaks, something eternal rises in its place. You no longer live from the outside in, but from the inside out. You no longer strive to become. You simply are. This is why God breaks the man he wants to use. Because he's not interested in putting new wine into old wineskins. The vessel must match the vision, and so the man must be remade, not rebranded, not revised, reborn. This rebirth is not into religion or dogma. It is into divine awareness. Into union with God, not just belief in God. This is why you must stop resisting your death season. Stop fighting to hold up what God is trying to tear down. Let it fall, let it collapse, let it go. That identity was never built to last. It was built to bring you here to the threshold of rebirth. But you cannot cross over if you're still clinging to Egypt while praying for Canaan. You must leave the old behind, and yes, it is terrifying. The unknown always is, but that's where faith lives, not in the safety of the familiar, but in the void between the dying and the rising. That void is holy ground. It's the space where your soul stops performing and starts listening. It's where you learn to sit in silence and realize that even without the noise, you are still here. The man who has died to himself is the most dangerous man on earth. Not because he is reckless, but because he is free. He no longer fears failure, because he no longer defines himself by success. He no longer seeks validation, because he knows he is already one with the source. He no longer manipulates outcomes, because he trusts the unfolding. This man is powerful because he is empty, and in that emptiness God fills him. Not with ego, but with essence, not with striving, but with stillness. He becomes a vessel, a mirror, a channel. He does not preach power. He embodies it. He does not force transformation. He awakens it in others simply by being. This is the path. The way up is still down. The way forward is still through. and the way into purpose is still through the grave of your old self. So let it die, mourn it if you must, but do not resurrect what God has already buried. You are not who you were, and who you're becoming cannot be born until you surrender who you've been, because only what dies can be raised in power. And the man God wants to use is not the one who clings to the past, but the one who has dared to let it go. The power of the resurrected man, when a man has died to his false self and risen into divine awareness, something profound happens. He becomes power, not just a vessel of it. His life no longer points to ambition, ego, or performance. It becomes a mirror for truth, a light that exposes, heals, and awakens. The resurrected man is not merely changed. He is transfigured, not in outward status, but in inward authority. This authority is not loud. It doesn't shout, push, or demand attention. It doesn't seek validation from pulpits, platforms, or applause. The authority of the resurrected man flows in silence. It walks into a room and shifts atmospheres. It speaks with clarity, not noise. It moves mountains, not by force, but by alignment with the unseen laws of spirit. This man has become the message, and because of that he cannot be ignored. You see, the true power of the resurrected man is not in his words, but in his being. He no longer believes he is separate from God. He knows that the Spirit of the living one is his life. He speaks, not to convince, but to create. He prays, not to plead, but to align. He moves, not from fear, but from fullness. He has stepped out of the illusion of striving and into the reality of embodiment. The journey has cost him everything, but he would not trade it. For now he walks in the kind of freedom that money cannot buy and religion cannot produce. He is no longer driven by need. He is led by vision born of the Spirit. His heart is no longer anxious to be seen. It is anchored in the invisible, where eternal truths are spoken without sound. This man has learned to sit with mystery. He doesn't rush to explain. He knows that some truths are not meant to be preached. They are meant to be lived. He is not a slave to how. He rests in the I am. He understands that God works through identity, not effort. And because he has died to the old self, he now lives in continuous communion, not as a visitor in God's presence, but as a carrier of it. The resurrected man sees beyond appearances. He no longer judges by sight, because he now lives from insight. He walks in divine imagination, not fantasy, but the God-given capacity to see what is unseen and call it into being. His faith is not theory, it is sight. He no longer asks for permission to believe. He speaks, and it is done, not because of pride, but because of oneness. He knows the secret. Power was never outside him. It was always within, buried beneath fear, ego, and false identity. And now that those layers have been stripped away, the treasure has been uncovered. The same Spirit that raised Christ from the dead now quickens his very being. He is alive, not just physically, but spiritually activated. This activation is not about miracles, although they may follow. It's not about success, although abundance flows. It is about union, rest, purpose beyond performance. The resurrected man doesn't chase open doors. He becomes the door through which God walks into situations. He doesn't hustle to be used. He becomes the place where heaven touches earth. You may look at this man and not see anything impressive outwardly. He may not have status, wealth, or title. But when he speaks, your spirit stands at attention. When he touches your life, something shifts. Why? Because he carries the weight of someone who has died and come back different. And the world cannot argue with transformation. The world is not changed by noise, platforms, or programs. It is changed by people who have been through the fire and come out gold. And that fire is not external. It is the furnace of inner surrender. The man who has risen out of that place walks in a power that no title can grant and no man can take away. This is the man God uses, not because he is perfect, but because he is willing to die, willing to lose, willing to look foolish, willing to be misunderstood, willing to surrender. This man is dangerous to darkness because he cannot be bribed, manipulated, or broken. He has already faced death, and on the other side found his true life. The resurrected man lives for something higher than survival. He lives for destiny. He doesn't preach hope. He embodies it. He doesn't carry burdens. He shatters them. He doesn't point to truth. He is the evidence that truth transforms. His life has become the sermon. He does not pray out of desperation, but out of alignment. He does not ask God to move. He becomes the movement. He does not fear rejection because he no longer needs the crowd. His ear is tuned to a higher frequency. His vision is anchored in eternity. His soul is quiet, yet ablaze. What once broke him now builds others. What once humbled him now lifts those around him. What once exposed him now empowers his message. His wounds have become weapons. His story a signpost, not of how great he is, but of how faithful God is when a man lets go of everything but obedience. So if you are still in the fire, do not quit. If you are in the wilderness, do not despair. Resurrection is coming, but first you must die, not physically, but spiritually. You must surrender the life you built on fear, image, and control. Only then can the life built on truth, freedom, and spirit rise in its place. And when you rise, you will not just walk in power. You will become it. You will be the answer to someone's prayer, the confirmation of someone's calling. The light in someone's night. You will speak and atmospheres will shift, not because of you, but because of the God within you. This is the end goal, not ministry, not fame, not influence, but embodiment. To be so one with the Spirit that your presence becomes a portal. To be so emptied of self that heaven flows freely through your life. To be so broken and yet so whole that your very existence declares, God lives here. This is the power of the resurrected man. And this, beloved, is why God breaks the man he wants to use.